Imagine closing your eyes at night, thinking you're safe in your own home, only to realize someone else is inside, waiting in the shadows. This isn't the plot of a horror movie. This actually happened. And more than a century later, it remains one of the most haunting, unsolved crimes in American history. This is the terrifying story of the Villisca Axe Murders. The date was June 9, 1912. Villisca, Iowa was a quiet farming town with just a few thousand residents. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where families left doors unlocked, and where crime was almost unheard of. That Sunday, the Moore family, Josiah, his wife Sarah, and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, attended a Children's Day service at the local Presbyterian church. Also present were 2 young girls, Lena and Ina Stillinger, who were friends of the Moore children. After the service ended around 9:30 p.m., the Stillinger sisters were invited to spend the night at the Moore household. Nobody could have imagined that it would be the last time any of them were seen alive. The Moore family and their young guests returned home around 10 p.m. They likely had a small supper, then prepared the children for bed. The house soon grew dark and silent, while the little town of Villisca slept peacefully. But sometime after midnight, while the family slept, an intruder slipped into the Moore home. The weapon of choice, a heavy axe, belonging to Josiah Moore himself, was taken from the backyard shed. The killer moved silently from room to room, striking down every single person inside. Chillingly, the attacker did not rush. All 8 victims were found in their beds. Every curtain in the house was drawn, and every mirror was eerily covered with clothing. It was as if the murderer wanted absolute privacy for their horrifying deeds. What's even more unsettling is that evidence suggested the killer lingered inside the house long after the murders were committed. In the kitchen, investigators found a plate of uneaten bread and meat and a bowl filled with bloody water. It appeared the killer had calmly washed their hands before disappearing back into the night, leaving a scene of unimaginable horror behind. The next morning, on June 10th, the Moore's neighbor, Mary Peckham, grew suspicious. She noticed the house was unusually quiet. The family's livestock hadn't been cared for, and the home's curtains, which were always open in the morning, were still tightly closed. Mary knocked on the door, but there was no answer. Overcome with a sense of dread, she called Josiah's brother, Ross Moore. Ross arrived, used his own key to unlock the door, and cautiously stepped inside. He only made it a few feet before he was stopped by a sight that would haunt him for the rest of his life. In the downstairs guest bedroom, he discovered the bodies of the 2 young Stillinger sisters. He immediately backed out of the house and called the town marshal. When officers arrived, they uncovered the full, grim extent of the massacre. Every member of the Moore family, along with their 2 young guests, had been brutally murdered in their sleep. The details of the crime scene were bizarre and deeply unsettling. All 8 victims were found in their beds, still dressed in their nightclothes. Every mirror in the house was covered with a piece of cloth or clothing, a strange ritual that baffled investigators. The axe, still smeared with blood, was found propped against the wall in one of the bedrooms. A piece of raw bacon, wrapped in a dish towel, was discovered in the parlor. To this day, no one has been able to explain why it was placed there. Perhaps the most tragic discovery was made in the room of the Stillinger sisters. Evidence suggested that 12-year-old Lena had awakened during the attack and tried to defend herself. This small, heartbreaking detail made the already chilling crime even more horrific. Painting a picture of the final, terrifying moments of her life, news of the murders spread like wildfire through the small town. But in the shock and confusion, a critical mistake was made. Instead of securing the crime scene, local law enforcement allowed dozens of townspeople to pour into the Moore home. Curious neighbors, reporters, and even children walked through the rooms, contaminating evidence and making an already difficult investigation nearly impossible. Despite the chaos, several suspects emerged over the years. First, there was Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who had been at the church service that same night. He was known to be eccentric and mentally unstable. He even confessed to the murders at one point, claiming God had told him to slay and slay utterly, but he later recanted. A jury couldn't convict him due to the lack of evidence and his unreliable testimony. Another prominent suspect was Senator Frank Jones, a wealthy and influential Iowa politician. Jones was a direct business rival of Josiah Moore, and rumors swirled that he may have hired a hitman to eliminate the competition. An investigator named James Wilkerson became convinced Jones was behind it and even got a grand jury to indict him, but the case fell apart and nothing was ever proven. Investigators also looked into other drifters and traveling workers, and even considered links to suspected serial killers operating in other states at the time. But every lead, every promising theory eventually went cold. In the end, despite multiple investigations, trials, and confessions, no one was ever convicted for the murders of the Moore family and the Stillinger sisters. The case remains officially unsolved to this very day. The Villisca Axe Murders were unlike anything America had ever seen before. Newspapers across the country ran the headlines, calling it the most horrifying crime in the history of the Midwest. The brutal, intimate nature of the murders created a nationwide panic. For the people of Villisca, life was never the same. Families began locking their doors at night, a practice unheard of before 1912. A deep-seated fear spread through the community. Parents worried for their children, and neighbors began to eye each other with suspicion. The once peaceful name of Villisca would forever be associated with terror. More than a century later, the Moore house still stands on a quiet street in Villisca, Iowa. It has been meticulously restored to its 1912 condition, with no running water or electricity, appearing just as it did on that fateful night. Today, it is known as one of the most infamous haunted houses in America. Visitors who are brave enough to stay overnight often report a wide range of chilling experiences. They speak of footsteps echoing in empty hallways, the faint sounds of children's voices calling out in the dark, and sudden, inexplicable cold spots. Many have claimed to see shadowy figures moving from room to room, or have witnessed doors opening and slamming shut on their own. Paranormal investigators from all over the world have visited the Villisca Axe Murder House, hoping to communicate with the spirits that might linger there. They have captured strange voices on their recorders, known as EVPs, as well as unexplained lights and photos of ghostly apparitions. One particularly disturbing incident occurred in 2014, when a paranormal investigator who was staying overnight inexplicably stabbed himself in the chest, survived, but later claimed to have no memory of the event, fueling speculation that a dark presence in the house may have influenced his actions. To this day, many believe the house carries a heavy, dark energy that refuses to leave. The Villisca Axe Murders are more than just a cold case. They are a chilling reminder of how quickly our sense of safety can be shattered. Even in the smallest and most peaceful of towns, the crime remains unsolved, the killer's identity lost to time. And perhaps that is what makes this story so uniquely terrifying, the knowledge that evil can walk through an unlocked door in the middle of the night, leaving behind nothing but unanswered questions and lingering shadows. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as chilling as I did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darkest mysteries. We'll see you in the next one.
Subscribe for a mind rush.